Black Hat 2020. We're not in Las Vegas, but we are here on DevCentral Connects, and we are excited to see all of you today. So welcome to DevCentral Connects. I'm John, and I'm joined by the man himself, Jason Rom. So Jason, good to see you, man. It's good to be here.
You too. And yeah, I'm excited to be a part of Black Hat. I've never been able to go myself yet. So even if I'm tangentially in some way connected, it's a good day.
It's awesome, man. This is as connected or as present as you're going to get at Black Hat this year. So we have some of the goodness that we always bring to you at Black Hat, where we have our booth. We typically have a booth there at Black Hat with F5. We do our Cypher Challenge. We give away T-shirts. We throw those little F5 squishy balls at people, and they love it. And we still have that actually even this year. So there's still a Cypher Challenge out there. So for those who have not signed up or have visited the virtual booth, come on by and check that out. You can participate in the Cypher Challenge, and I think there's T-shirts that you can earn and get and all that stuff as well. So yeah, man, we're excited to be here at Black Hat. So Jason, before we kind of get in, we've got some amazing guests today that are going to talk about a bunch of great stuff as it relates to F5 and security and all the some of the attack trends that we've seen, and it's gonna be a great time today. But before we get into that, I've got a great question for you, and it has nothing to do with security or Black Hat or any of that, but it's just a good kind of get to know you sort of question.
Okay.
So here's the question: if you could travel back in time to any point in time,
wow, where
would you go? Or maybe I should say, when would you go, and why?
Wow, back in time.
That's a tough one. I gotta admit that's a tough one. So maybe you don't have like one, but maybe there's like hey, here's a couple.
Yeah, wow. An Industrial Revolution would probably be one of my destinations, because AC's already kind of a thing at least if you are a person of means, which I wouldn't have been. But maybe if I could have rode the coattails of somebody with means to score myself some air conditioning.
Some AC, yeah. So when you said AC, that air conditioning, I didn't know if you meant like alternating current.
Well, I guess that also.
They had the big debate back then, I think it was Ben Franklin wanted DC, but lost out. He's like, that AC stuff is like super, super dangerous.
I think you're a century off. I think it was Edison.
Or Edison.
So, yeah, Edison.
Whatever.
Yeah, Edison was really pushing the DC, but Tesla and all that went out with the alternating current. So
that's amazing. Yep. So here's mine. I have always been, I'm fascinated by a bunch of stuff. I've always been fascinated by how the Egyptians built those pyramids over there in Giza, right? How in the world did that happen? So I would go back and check that out and be like, oh, that's how they did that. Those are some smart people.
I heard it was aliens.
Or aliens, right? Either way, man, I'd want to go see it happen, right? If it's aliens or Egyptians, whatevs, right? Good to go, man. All right. Yeah, so like I said, everybody, we have got a great show today. Hey, I will mention this from an administrative point of view. We are on the Black Hat virtual booth there with F5. So you guys can chat with us and chat with the virtual booth attendees. We're also on LinkedIn, and we're on YouTube, and we're on Periscope. So for those that want to interact with us, you can always chat and provide comments, and we'll interact with all of your questions during the show today. So feel free to do all of that. We look forward to hearing from everybody. So, well, Jason, with that, we've got our first guest that we can introduce today. So maybe we'll roll the quick tape, and we'll bring her on.
All right.
So Sarah Body, the senior director of our communities team with F5 Labs and DevCentral. So appreciate everything you do for all of us on the communities teams. So welcome to DevCentral Connects and Black Hat 2020. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. We think alike. I was thinking pyramids too, and I was thinking aliens, but now I'm shifting to Easter Island because you took that one. And we want to know how those were made too.
Yes.
The heads on Easter Island, right?
Where did those things come from?
We might be channeling back the aliens.
Yeah. Did they build up the pyramids and then go drop a couple of big heads on the islands, or who knows what they did?
It's possible. I mean, we have some plausible ideas for how the pyramids were made, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. It would just, how cool would that be to actually be there and see it happen?
Exactly.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Yeah. Or Stonehenge, or there's all kinds of stuff. We can spend the whole show just on that.
I did see a video of like a guy like single-handedly with simple machines erected 3 and 4 ton stones in his backyard to kind of show. Don't know if this is the way they do it, but this is how I do it, and it was pretty plausible. Single man did all of it with very simple machines. It was kind of crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah.
The innovation thousands of years ago was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, some people are mistaken that it's like, hey, us today, we're super modern, we're super innovative, whatever. It's like, no. There have been some extremely innovative people along the way. So we stand on the shoulders of giants, as they say,
or giant heads.
Or giant heads if you're on Easter Island. That's right. Whatever. It's awesome.
Although that's probably not permitted. I'm guessing.
Well, it just happens. So we keep it real here on DevCentral Connects. Good stuff, man. Well, hey, so Sarah, great to have you here. I just we wanted to talk to you. You're the senior director of our communities team with DevCentral and F5 Labs. And before that, you were actually in charge of the labs team itself. And so we wanted to hear about like the origin of where F5 Labs came from. Some people may not even know what F5 Labs is. So maybe if you could take a minute and just tell us about some of that.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me here, you guys. I'm a little biased, but I'm a big fan of the show.
Love it.
Yeah. So F5 Labs actually started 4 years ago. Our first website launched at Black Hat 2016. So there's a little bit of a labs anniversary for us. Nice. And it was actually the brainchild of Preston Hogue. He was running security marketing back then, and there was a ton of different research teams across F5 that were doing various forms of threat intelligence for the purposes of, writing signatures for our products, making them smarter, WAF signatures, DDoS signatures, et cetera. And there was an interest in formalizing a team to really aggregate all those different data sets together and tell stories. But his charter was to do it in an agnostic way. So we weren't simply doing research for the purposes of selling F5 products. We were doing research for the purposes of looking at broader industry trends and actually writing reports, articles, blogs with context to be actually helpful to the security community instead of just being kind of bias reporting for a vendor purpose. So that was really kind of his idea for the inception of Labs. And he reached out to me. I was running security at a publicly traded company in LA at the time and had a long history of incident response, which kind of gets you into threat hunting, and was like, hey, I have this opportunity. Do you want to come over to F5 and start running this team and build this team out? And it sounded great. So I came on board, and we're 4 years later. We've got a whole team of people that are engineers, ex-CISOs, professional technology writers, researchers, et cetera. 4 years into it and over 400 pieces of content. So it happened pretty quickly, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You think of how far we've come in a short period of time.
Yeah, man, 4 short years. I mean, that's, you guys have done a lot, and the team's amazing. I love it that you're agnostic when it comes to the technology. So while I say you, I mean, all of us are under the F5, umbrella, whatever, but the F5 Labs team, they're not there to push a bunch of F5 products, right? They're there to say, hey, here's some security threat research for the good of the broader, community, the broader world, right? So it's, yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, it works out in F5's favor too, because, we had a business model 20 years ago to, be an application delivery company, right? And it just so happens that apps are now, the target for attackers for a lot of really logical reasons, right? There's more apps than any other kind of system. There are what's processing PII, collecting valuable data. They have access to intellectual property. They're publicly facing, right? So they are the target of attackers. And so even when we're doing like agnostic threat landscape pieces, it's still going to lend itself towards application attacks and application targets, right? So it ends up working out in our favor. But one of the things we really focus on is we do a lot of research that doesn't have anything to do with an F5 product or service. And we focus on being super transparent about how we derive our data, the methodologies in which we, derive statistics, and we like to share that, and we like to be data driven. That is something that I feel like is a little bit different from other vendor research teams that do their own versions of threat intelligence, because a lot of times it's solely based on data that's inside their product portfolio. And of course, if it's that, then you're going to end up with stats that drive towards your products. But we collect a lot of different third-party data sets. We have a broader range of data that we pull from to kind of contextualize the bigger picture of the threat landscape globally. And that helps us, I think, tell, bigger, broader stories that are contextualized, that help our customers really defend better. Like that's really what we care about. And we care about being transparent and honest. One of the fun things we like to do when we go to conferences like Black Hat or RSA is, we'll walk around and look at the stats that are on the booths of, all of our competitors in the massive auditorium. And some of them are questionable. You raise your eyebrow a little bit, and then you'll go and you'll talk to people in the booth and you'll ask them about, how they got to that particular conclusion. We don't usually run into the threat researchers at the booth that drove those conclusions, and we're not walking around doing it to be like shady or like, harassing the competition, but we're genuinely curious because there's a lot of stats out there. There's a lot of FUD that, kind of desensitizes security practitioners, and they don't listen to a lot of vendor reporting because it just seems so self-serving. And so we really try to be transparent, honest, tell the ugly truth, right?
Yeah.
It's something we care a lot about.
The reality is sometimes your baby is ugly,
Yeah. Yeah. And if we're not honest and truthful, we're not helping fix the problem, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I love what you said too about not only collecting things in an agnostic way, and this is not just about, hey, we have to only focus on F5 kind of stuff, but the team shares the data, like all of the data. They share the methodology, like, hey, how did we go about getting these things? That's I love the transparency of it all, right?
Yep. And then the other thing we really care about is, I keep talking about contextualizing the threat. It's really important. At the heart of threat intelligence, it's geared towards, automation and engineers, but you got to have context at a C-level, whether that's a CISO or a CIO or a CTO. And then you have to have context across your business constituents in IT. So to make sure that they understand threats and make sure that they're considering security in all of their business initiatives. And so we have a whole page on F5 Labs dedicated to CISO level conversations or CXO level conversations. And then we have a page about, it's called the Learning Center. Well, actually it's not deployed yet. I think I'm putting the cart before the horse here. It'll be out in a couple of months.
It's a teaser. We're all like sitting on the edge of our seat now, Sarah.
What is this answer you say?
Yes. But it's called educational content on the site right now, but it's because we recognize that a lot of people have security responsibility that don't have security backgrounds. And in order for them to understand what they should be doing better or different, you need to contextualize it in more of like a 101 way. And so, our core focus is threat intelligence, but then we contextualize it for a CISO audience and from a non-security audience as well.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, it's so important. Certainly you need like the security threat researchers or the, security teams to understand the details. But if you don't have that C-level understanding as well, it's some of the major muscle movements, some of the major actions are just not going to happen.
Yep.
So super cool. Yep. So you share everything, fully transparent, and you run the spectrum from the in the weeds technical workers all the way up to the C-level execs that to really fully understand all this stuff.
Yep.
Amazing work.
And sharing makes everybody better, right?
Hey, people will accuse me of oversharing, and I think it's helpful. So.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, good
stuff.
I'm
glad we have it.
Yeah. No, I think it's such a great asset for F5 and frankly for the security world in general. So anyone and everyone that's out there in Black Hat watching this right now, if you have not seen F5 Labs, then go check it out. And it's a great place to be. And Sarah, thanks for your leadership in growing out that team and making it such a formidable team just in this past 4 years. I mean, that's like lightning speed to go from nothing to an amazing team.
Yep.
So.
And speaking of F5 Labs, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was going to say we like to get stuff done. We like to do it quickly. We like to be helpful. So
we choose speed around here at F5, right?
That's right.
We choose speed.
That's right.
An F5 value.
That's right.
Speaking of F5 Labs, however, we're going to move on to our next guest. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you at the end of the show for any Q&A that we need to address.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
It's great to see you, Sarah. So a man who is no stranger to Black Hat, Mr. Ray Pompon, the director of F5 Labs. So Ray, as you probably saw, we just got done talking to Sarah, who kind of who blazed the trail, who led the way to help do this F5 Labs thing, and now you have taken the reins and you are leading this team, and so it's awesome to have you here. So thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Awesome, man. So, okay, so really quick, we got to ask you about some crazy memories at Black Hat. Ray, you've been there many times, so give us a little taste of I don't know, something crazy that went down at Black Hat one of those years.
So my first Black Hat was 1999, right around the time I met Sarah, actually, but just before I came to work with her the first time.
Were y'all trying to hack into something together at Las Vegas, or?
No, I was there alone because I was actually working for another company.
All right.
And I think Dr. Mudge was doing the keynote, and it was at the Venetian. It was just opening, so the alarms kept going off all the time. So, and I think he was actually giving the keynote, and the alarms went off at one point, and he looked a little worried because I was telling him in the pre-show that people do get arrested occasionally at Black Hat and DEF CON, and he was sort of like,
Yeah. That's why Jason has never been to Black Hat. It's better to avoid that situation.
I'm quite sure I would very quickly end up on the wall of shame.
Yeah, it was fun times, but and I still have my Black Hat bag because the giveaway was like this, for all attendees, this really nice bag that I still use to this day as my travel bag with the Black Hat logo stitched on the top.
I love
it.
If
you see that bag at an airport, when we ever get to travel again, don't steal it. It's mine.
Yeah, circa 1999, Ray Pompon Black Hat bag. I love it, man. I can only imagine that if the keynote speaker at Black Hat 99 is giving the address, giving the speech, and then alarms start going off everywhere. It's like, wait a minute, this is Black Hat.
Yeah.
Like this could be something crazy. Someone could be driving these things or whatever.
Well, at DEF CON was worse because I can remember DEF CON. Back then, it was at the Alexa Park, and somebody had hacked the internal. How they have those little TVs that show like the keynote games and that they had hacked it to show the adult entertainment channels across the entire.
I mean, is there another option to put up in the public? Of course you're going to do that. It's fantastic. Well, good to go, man. Well, Ray, so you are the leader now of F5 Labs, and I know we just talked to Sarah about some of the motivation behind what F5 Labs does. And the strategy and just all the different greatness that you guys do every day. But we wanted to go into maybe a couple of the details of some things that the labs team has been working on recently. So is there any kind of cool technology or thread or whatever that you could maybe share with us?
Well, I'm going to champion Katie's work. She was our summer intern, but
like
I say, she is a full-fledged F5 employee with all the capabilities of anyone at F5. It's just been amazing. And she released Crypto Nice. I think, has she been on your show yet? Did she do a
No, I tell you, she would be awesome. She would be awesome. She is awesome. Yeah, I mean, as intern, just hit the ground running and did amazing work. Yep.
Yeah, so this is her last week. So after that, you're going to have to bribe her or pay
Katie,
her.
Yeah, we're going to have to give her one of those T-shirts that we talked about a minute ago.
This tool that you're talking about, right?
Yes. It's an open source TLS scanner. And we've got more articles coming on actually how she built it.
Okay.
It's actually really fascinating. Some of especially if you're getting into Python code and all that kind of little geeky hacky stuff, which we love.
Yeah.
So this is a free open source tool that you actually can load as actually an executable or as a library to do your own TLS scanning. So this is to support our, we do an annual report on TLS telemetry. And David Warburton has really been driving that. And so this year it was like, hey, we're going to get you some help. And so here's a cool project. And she worked with him and built this amazing tool. And then we're like, hey, let's just open source it. I'm sure the conversation was a little more complex than that, but that's kind of where we landed. And it was like, all right, great. And it's just been amazing, the response from the community and the usage and, people giving giving feedback. So we're actually got a lot more enhancements, support for more platforms.
Yeah,
it's really cool. So I highly, especially the geeks out there, check this out.
Yeah,
it's a real neat thing to play with.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful things about sharing with the community and open source and all, and is you get so much amazing feedback from others who are like, "Hey, you could do this," or "Do you think about that?" Whatever. It just makes it better, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. So Crypto Nice by
yes.
Yeah.
The name came last. I mean, that's always one of the hardest parts of coding.
Yeah,
is coming up with a cool name.
Yeah, you need a name, you need a logo, and you need a website. You know, it's like way back with the Heartbleed vulnerability. You know, it was the heart with the little drops.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh man, yeah. You know it's bad when vulnerability starts to get cutesy names and logos. So we got to fight back and have the tools, the open source tools, have all that stuff again.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Awesome, man. All right, so Crypto Nice has been an amazing tool that you guys have worked on recently. I know that there's some API stuff coming up. Is that true?
So we just finished API July.
API July. Yeah.
And we did a great story on open banking. We did an API learning piece, and then Sandra, who's coming on a little later to talk about some of the research he did. And in fact, API July is now expanded into August. So we've got more stuff coming, some more drill downs into more API research. Some of it Sandra will tease a bit, but we're going to look at some more deeper dives into some of the specific technology around APIs and the security mechanisms there, like JOT. Some of the stuff around banking, like we did the open banking, and that actually got a huge response because people are doing a lot of stuff with API in the finance sector. So we're going to do some deeper dives in there and look at some stuff. And then further out, I mean, we've got our annual phishing and fraud report coming up, and we've been starting the data gathering for that, and that's gonna come in the fall.
Okay.
And that's another David Warburton project.
Way to go, David Warburton, man.
Right.
Yeah, that guy's everywhere. You just can't stop David Warburton. You can only hope to contain David Warburton, right? That's awesome. You know, Ray, really quick on the phishing stuff. I've talked to so many people. They're like, man, is phishing still a thing? You know, it's like, that's such old stuff.
It's still not just a thing. It's the thing. Because I keep having these conversations, both with let's say people who are new to the field and people who have been 20 years in, veterans. And we talk about 0-day exploits and pivots and all this. And it's like, yeah, but realistically, the APTs are going to spear phish them. And then if that doesn't work, then maybe we'll move on to the 0 days or the Tom Cruise rappelling down an elevator shaft.
The Mission Impossible C-17 hanging off the side or whatever.
Exactly. But we could just send them an email pretending it's from their mom or something and say hey, can I have the password for the email? And then boom, you got it. So it's the number one source of breach. We see a ton of it. We keep seeing it. And that's why we keep writing about we need to, this is a problem. As a matter of fact, there is some research going on at Black Hat right now, presented by some of our folks over at Shape, part of F5 now, about some of the ways that you could spoof email and use that for phishing. And it's one of those, there's a lot of security mechanisms that we've put out in the industry, not we, but we as an industry have put out, that, guess what? They can be bypassed, they can be tricked, and you can create fake emails. So it's an ongoing issue that's just not going to go away anytime soon.
I'm getting so freaked out about spear phishing. I think I'm wearing out our internal teams. No, it's real. You're fine.
No,
it's gonna be okay.
I used to be the guy on the other end of that, and I always thank people, even when it's a false positive. And then I would send the hate mail to whoever sent it. Dude, your email looks like phishing. Please don't send this out.
Yeah, make it look less fishy. Well, the challenge with a lot of those is, let's say you have some kind of HR requirement that it's like you got to do this training. And we, company X, we've outsourced the training to Training R Us. So you're going to get a link from Training R Us, but make sure you click on it. And then it's like, wait a minute, my mind's kind of blown here. I've been trained to not click any link, not opening any attachment. So and Jason, I don't know if you felt the same way. We had one a couple months ago. I was like, no, this is definitely fake, because there was a domain name, a subdomain of a pretty common survey company. That didn't look legit, but it ended up being totally legit. But it was.
So this is the way you can get out of your training.
Notification, right? I didn't get any kind of internal notification that it was coming, and so
I didn't do my training. I was phishing. I deleted it. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Now you're in in hot water with the HR department because you didn't do your training. It's like,
I did my fishing training, and that taught me not to do this.
That made me not do my whatever training. That's right.
Yeah. Well, and we're excited that we actually have a lot more data coming in. We've got some new data sources we're lining up, so that report and some other reports are going to be really interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Sarah Body, the cyber version of Tom Cruise in elevator shafts is actually way cooler. Splicing fiber, topping nuclear centrifuges. I think about that. It's like, hey, yeah, you could be the Tom Cruise and like come in, the top floor of the skyscraper and cut through the glass and have the whatever. And that's a super cool way to like attack people. Or maybe if in the case of web applications, trying some, 0-day whatever vulnerability. But it's like, you know what? If the front door is open, just walk through the front door, right?
Right. Or better yet, just get somebody to open the door for you because you're wearing a uniform.
Yeah. Hey, in there, can you open the front door for me? And they're like, oh yeah, here, I'll open the front door. Okay. No need for the glass cutting and the, centrifuge nuclear stuff, right? And that's phishing, right? I mean, that's what phishing is basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things we do in the report we did last year. We actually showed real, like, these are actual phishes, and they look just like a Gmail notification or something that's legit, because they've gone beyond the, I talk about the old days of Angel Fire, where the mocked up website, but now it's like, they take the real website and build that, and it looks good. It looks, the emails look perfect.
Yeah, it's not some like GeoCities with the MIDI,
with the pop-ups, coming up while you're like, I'm logging into my banking site. I'm like,
that's not what it looks like anymore. So it looks legit. So so phishing is still a thing. And then, like you said, it's not just a thing; it's the thing. So I find that fascinating. Good to go, man. Well, I think maybe another quick thing I wanted to ask about is I think there's some website updates that are coming down. Yes. Is that true? Like on the lab site?
Yes, we've got a bunch of stuff we're looking at. Like Sarah kind of teased about the new learning page. We're gonna have a new learning landing page. I'm excited because I am an old school geek that the RSS feeds will be coming back.
Nice.
It's kind of how I consume a lot of my content.
Yeah.
We're doing a little bit of tweaking to make it easier to find things on the site. Well, like Sarah said, we have 400 pieces of content on there. And so when you do the search for something, it's like, wow, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm like, yes, there is. How can we make that a little easier for you to find something that, we literally almost every topic in security, we've got something on. Yeah. And try to surface a lot of our guest bloggers as well. And we're getting a lot more guest bloggers coming in as well. So it's gonna get interesting.
Yep. One of the things I love about the lab site is that when you go and like you look for an article, you find an article, whatever, it tells you obviously who wrote it and all that. In fact, we looked at Crypto Nice a second ago. Jason brought it up, but it tells you like who wrote it. But then it'll typically say, hey, this is going to take you about this long to read this thing, right? So it's about a 10-minute read, or it's so you kind of know, hey, let me emotionally prepare myself. But then it also shows like on the full stack of security, like, hey, these are the areas that this thing, deals with, right? So I found that really, really cool.
Yeah, it's cool. There's your 6-minute read, your 12-minute read.
Yeah.
What we'll get to here in a few minutes, the 60-minute read. Get yourself a cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee.
Lock the kids in the closet.
Yeah, I was gonna say so. Yeah, if we were there at Black Hat, I'd just be handing them out. Like, here, just take the physical copies of these things so that you've got them.
Yeah.
Yeah. At I love that. That is the report, right?
Yeah, we usually almost every report ends up as some sort of paper copy eventually. So at trade shows and things, we give them out because I think it's a 60-minute read, but it's well worth the time. But you really can spend the time going deep into it and not burning up a lot of printing ink, which is actually how I read a lot of big stories now. I just end up, because I don't go to trade shows anymore, I'll just end up just printing them. But it's worth reading.
Yeah, no, they're great reads.
I'm old school like that too. It's like I just like to have a book in my hands. I've tried e-reading, and I just I don't prefer it. I print
the local Kinko's knows me well because I'll come in with my USB. Like, can you print these?
Yeah, hey, let me put this USB in all of your devices. It's totally cool. I'm at Black Hat. It's no big deal.
Yeah,
good to go. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, Ray, it's been awesome to kind of get some of the updates on the details of what you guys are working on, what's coming down, down the road here. We look forward to the new website updates and all the great work that you guys do at F5 Labs. So thanks for everything you do, man.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us again.
Yep. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes after we talk to Mr. Sander.
That's right.
All right.
Mr. Sander Vinberg, the threat researcher. This is the man where the rubber meets the road at F5 Labs, the guy that's in the details, the guy that knows it all.
The trench warfare.
The trench warrior. That's right. Sander, who might or might not be wearing a kilt right now, but none of us will ever know. Sander, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hey, before we get into some of the App Protect report and all that stuff, we talked to Ray a second ago about phishing not only being a thing, but being the thing. And you had a bit of a story a minute ago about someone who kind of phished themselves a little bit. Is that right?
Oh yeah, it was one of the copywriters that was collaborating with our team last year, and he reached out to us and he was like, "Hey, is it possible to reverse phish yourself?" And we were all like, "What are you talking about?" I'm asking for a friend, and what he had done, or apparently what had happened was he had like a plumbing emergency, which is not the time that we are at our most suspicious, right? And so it was actually a pretty savvy attack. So he looks up the name of the plumber that he used to go to and saw a phone number in the first hit and just called them. He's like, "Hey, I need you to come out. I got a leaky pipe or something." And the guy's like, "Sure, yeah, let me just get a credit card number and we'll send someone right out." And then the alarm bells went off, and our colleague had the good sense to hang up right there. And what had happened was that the plumber had changed their phone number, and someone was keen to that and put up a fake site with the old phone number and was like catching people that had saved the old number.
Wow, man.
And yeah, I can't even imagine that they get enough out of that to make it worth the effort. Like it seems like pretty small potatoes for phishing, but I thought it was hilarious, the reverse plumber phish.
But I guess if you get a couple of credit card numbers, you can, you do the little test, let me do $1 or whatever, and then boom, you start just charging like crazy.
Well, if he's good at upselling, like the HVAC guy that visited me last week, it's not small potatoes.
Right? Yeah, it's several $1,000s like that. Whatever.
That's funny.
Yeah, super interesting, man. Yeah, people with phone numbers, and it's like, hey, I've got the phone number. My new phone number is someone else's old phone number, and so you put it together. Super cool. Well, awesome, man. Well, Sander, I know you've been doing like tons of research and and all of the details surrounding the App Protect report. So there's like the full report, the App Protect report from 2019 that's out. And then we just released, I say we, I mean, you have just released on the F5 Labs site one of the, what we'll call kind of the teaser, kind of the initial articles for the 2020 App Protect report. So maybe really quick, if you don't mind, tell us what the App Protect report even is, and then kind of give us some of the details of what we could find in that thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was lucky. I inherited this project from Ray, who did the first one a few years ago. And the idea really behind it is, behind the application protection report and the research behind it, is that I think there's a tendency in our industry to just get focused on like the big story of the week, right? So it's like whatever the new nation state threat actor is, or like here's the big vulnerability, or like check out this crazy exploit. And it's like we just go from one of those to the next, and that tends to consume a lot of attention. But there's a lot of us that stuff doesn't really apply to. And like to go back to your thing that you were talking about with Ray, it's like even the APTs are going to phish to start because it's easy and it's cheap and it almost always works. So the point of this project is to get away from that hype and actually say, like, if we look over a full year time frame, what are the risks that actually come to light? Like, how are people actually losing money from cyber attacks? And it ends up being a lot of the same kind of basic stuff over and over again, as opposed to these like extraordinarily sophisticated hacks. So the way that we sort of think about it, my like one sentence pitch is, we're trying to use data to bring tactics and strategy and security back together, right? And like another way to put that is I think it's really easy for a lot of teams where it's like the CISO's over here, and the SOC warriors are over there, and they kind of are speaking different languages, and they even sort of conceptualize the problem differently. And we want to help those folks get on the same page and actually understand, like, how did the risks actually turn into losses? That's what we're trying to do with the APR.
Yeah. I love that. That's super practical information. I mean, it's I love it that, I think for some people, myself included, you can look at like this, what might be this attack threat landscape or whatever. And in my mind, I envision like what Sarah had said a minute ago with, the Tom Cruises of the, in the nuclear centrifuge or whatever, right? And there's all these 0-day vulnerabilities and whatever that they're injecting very strategically and surgically into your web apps. But it's like, if that's not actually why people are actually losing money or the businesses are going down, if the answer is actually no, hey, John Wagnon, it's spear phishing or phishing, like that's what you need to be focused on. It's like, oh, okay, well then let's focus on that.
Yeah, right. And like there's this, I mean, like one of the fundamental issues that we're always trying to grapple with is every environment is different, and people are quick to tell you, hey, my environment is different when you recommend controls on a checklist basis, but we don't often sort of capture the differences between, or like there are all kinds of differences between different organizations, different networks that they're trying to defend. And so not all threats apply to all people. And so what we're trying to do at the very minimum is give people a basis of, here's where I'm coming at, here's what I'm running, here's my customers, here's like my whole threat picture. What should I care about, right? And so we are really trying to help people get the bang for their buck for their security programs. And if you are, let's say, a regional or a local retailer, you're probably not a prime target for, let's say, the North Korean government, right? Like that's a sort of obvious example, right? But that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people get a sense of, okay, for your environment, for what you're doing, what are the threats that really apply? Yeah.
Who's going to come after you? Right. Yeah. And how are they going to come after you?
Right.
All that kind of stuff. Super helpful. Well, that's awesome, man. So I know APIs have been a big focus lately, right? With there's potential for attackers to take advantage of the vulnerabilities around APIs. What are some of the, I don't know, have you guys looked at some of those, some API related risks lately? And I don't know, see anything about that?
Yeah, it's funny because actually just a couple of weeks before I came on board here, Ray, as part of the original APR, he published a sort of follow-up because APIs were really, really growing in prevalence. This was like late 2018. And then by the time that I had taken over this project and I was starting to speak out about it, that section of the talk and that section of the site was something that people were asking about more and more. And so it is, at the same time that we focus on it more and more, people are asking about it. And it is, in the last 18 months, I feel like the topic has really sort of blossomed. It's something we're definitely focusing a lot because on the one hand, they're completely transforming online business, right? And it's like publishing an API and using that to sort of integrate your business and build partnerships. It's like kind of a cornerstone of modern business on the web. But the security is like way behind. I would describe the entire state of API security as immature right now. And it hasn't gotten really bad in terms of actual confirmed breaches yet. But I think it will, because the secret's out. And that's one of the first places that our attackers are starting to look when they're doing reconnaissance on our network.
Okay. So this is an area that's ripe for for attack. Because like you said, it's a cornerstone of business on the web, right? For web applications, but security is behind. And so it's like, all right, if this is supremely prevalent, if it's way out there, everybody's using it, but it's not that secure, well then guess what? If I'm an attacker, then guess where I'm headed, right?
Right. And I mean, it's like when I say it's immature, what I mean is like of the API incidents that I've been reviewing over the last year or so, the single largest sort of category of problem that is leading to these incidents is like almost a third of all of them are because there's no authentication at all in front of the API endpoint, right? And so what that tells me is that the folks that are building this thing and publishing it don't totally understand exactly kind of what an API represents in terms of the attack surface, right? And like, so the short version is, yeah, APIs are fantastic for business. I'm not trying to say don't use them, because they're already here, right? You can't fight that. But you have to treat it like an endpoint. You have to put controls in front of it. And if you have no authentication in front of your API, because you assume that all the traffic is going to be machine to machine, which ideally it is, right? But attackers know about that, right? And if they can discover it and there's no auth in it, you just kind of opened up your network, right? And so what I'm basically what I'm preaching at the moment is, yeah, there are all kinds of really sophisticated API security frameworks you can put into place. You can do all this sort of stuff, but like at the very least, cover your baseline. Like put some authentication in front of your API, manage authorization, post authentication for your API, so that you don't just, once someone's in, you don't give them sort of the crown jewels to your network, right? So like by all means, use a service mesh to cover your east-west traffic and do all this sort of stuff, but also just cover your baseline. Put some minimal controls in front of your APIs. That's like right now, when I say that the state of API security is immature, that's what I'm talking about, is like get these basics in place, and then we can sort of deal with the more sophisticated stuff.
Given that we're in 2020 and APIs are not a new thing, but certainly new-ish, why do you think it is that authentication and authorization isn't something that's prevalent in the development process?
I think that's a sort of a product of a bunch of forces coming together at once. And I'm actually really glad you asked that, because that sort of goes right to the core of how we're approaching this year's application protection report. In essence, what I'm arguing is that even though APIs have been around for decades, and we've been using them for decades to connect up different services, we've never done it at this kind of scale, and it's never been like the default architectural pattern until now.
Yeah.
And so the way that I've been talking about this with folks is it's sort of like it had to arrive at its final form for us to recognize what a change has really happened. You know what I mean? So like, yes, APIs were around, but now we are in the era of the API, you could say.
Yeah.
And now it is, in fact, I just saw an industry analyst predicts that by the end of 2022, 90% of web apps are going to have a larger attack surface through APIs than through user endpoints, right? Wow. So in essence, I'm not the only one saying this, but it's like you can look at it as a software component. As a software component, it's like this little evolutionary jump, right? And if you look at it as an architectural style and what it means for how we build applications, which then in turn passes on to security, it's not a little evolutionary thing. This is a big revolution in terms of how we're building apps. And so a big focus of what we're doing in our research this year is about application architecture. And I'm arguing that application architecture and changes in that architecture is doing more to drive risk in security than any sort of like new stuff coming up from attackers. Because the fact is, attackers don't have to come up with new stuff right now, because the same old stuff works. They just go after API endpoints instead of when they're not phishing, they just go after API endpoints.
I guess I could give an example of that. I've been building Flask apps, Python Flask environment for a lot of years, and you know, the conversion, I guess, in the last 2 to 3 years, rather than just having your own native HTML templates in the app, the kind of the design pattern now is to front it with Vue or React or whatever, and the last part is all API. Yeah. And so you have a dedicated, separate front end, and then, but in all the tutorials I've worked through, none of them address security at all. It's this is how you connect everything, but I haven't found a tutorial yet that addresses security from the standpoint of, okay, you have your API and it's separate from your front end, but how are you protecting that API so that not your front end is blocked out?
Yeah, and I mean, I saw a really good example of the same sort of development principles in an incident I was reviewing just yesterday for the next installment of this research. And there was a site, and it gave you 3 options to log in. You could use your Facebook creds to log in. You could use your Google creds to log in, like often you can on smaller platforms these days, or you could use a username and a password in the sort of standard thing. The password that they wanted was actually just a 4-digit PIN, which I kind of find a little crazy, unless there was like no no data in the platform that needed to be protected at all. I think that just seems like a bad idea. But in any case, that wasn't even the problem. The problem was that if you went to reset that password, they would mail you a temporary PIN, and in the regular user UI, you wouldn't see what that secret was. But if you looked at the API traffic, it would communicate that PIN in clear text.
Oh, wow.
Meaning that if you know another user's email address, and you can enter, basically you could brute force the password reset process with a bunch of emails that you just assume are going to work, until you get a secret that works for you, and then you have a username password combination, you get into the thing, and most monitoring isn't even going to pick that up, right? So it was one of these things where you could tell that someone built this from the standpoint of, can I make this work as quickly as possible and get this service up on the web, which you can make a lot of money doing that, right? And I understand why people are doing it this way, because everyone's making a lot of money off this sort of thing. But the other shoe is about to drop, and I am predicting we're going to see, we've already seen, if 2020 stays on track with the number of API breaches we've seen, or not breaches, sorry, incidents that we've seen in the first half of the year, if that rate continues, 2020 will have more API incidents that I know about than the previous 2 years combined, right? Wow. So the secret's out for everybody except for the people publishing these APIs.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess, unfortunately, that would seem appropriate for 2020.
Right.
Everything else.
Right. Yeah. Just a garbage year from start to finish.
Yeah. Goodness, man. But man, that's what a helpful thing to know about, though. If you're developing these APIs, if you're building these out, it's like you said, Jason. A lot of times it's like, hey, here's how you get it to work, but we're not going to tell you anything about the security part of that. But
right. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember that fiasco with the Democratic Convention in Iowa and that polling app that they published.
Yeah,
that was also in a way an API problem. And I was reading up the analysis about it, and one of the security researchers that was analyzing that app, that reverse engineered it, said that it was like literally the code was the sort of code you would expect if someone was following a tutorial online for like, how do I implement authorization into an API? They just sort of plugged and chugged and bashed at it till they got it to work. And that sort of, for an election application, like that kind of tells you everything you need to know, right? And so it's like, I don't want to turn this into a blame game about developers or something. I think the question of how to get security and DevOps to play together, that's a super complicated conversation, but it's clearly a problem in this thing, right? People are publishing way faster than security teams can keep up, and it is driving a lot of risk.
Yeah.
Well, that just comes back to what we talked about at the very top of your coming on. It's like, you have these applications that are, the security problems, and we're talking about the stuff like SQL injection still and spear phishing still, and because none of that's sexy, but it's still completely effective because nobody's actually coming back to the root and solving it.
Totally. Yeah.
And, you look at the application process and build it and make it work well, and in a lot of people's minds, okay, now let's secure it. Where that's completely backwards. That security needs to be, that thread needs to be in the entire development life cycle, and it's not.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because I've been in this field now for about 10 years, and I remember in graduate school they kept saying over and over again, like, make sure that development or that security is part of the design process, and make sure that security and devs are talking early and often, and all this sort of stuff. They laid all this out for me in 2010. And the other day we were Bray and I were presenting some research to some CISOs, and we were talking with these folks, and it was like all they wanted to talk about was how can they get more collaboration between these different teams, and how can they get my message over to these other folks. And I was like, man, these problems are just, if anything, they're worse. It's wild. And all of which sort of leads you to this thing that the security industry is one of these things that looks different. Like the problems look different depending on the angle you're coming from. And that's really one of the things we're trying to address with this report is like, let's just get everybody on the same page and at least establish some baseline problems. And then how we fix it, that's a more complicated question, but let's all at least agree what the problems are.
Right. Yeah. Step one is admit that there's a problem.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Kind of a thing. Yeah. Well, that's fascinating, man. Well, Sander, it's awesome to know all the work that you guys are doing with, these APIs, or we could have gone into, there's so many things, in these reports that you go into, just to give maybe a little hint for the people that would watch this, like stuff like form jacking, or certainly credential stuffing is still a big problem, brute force attacks, those kinds of things. And you guys dive deep into all of that, right?
Yeah. And last year, as part of the research, one of the big things we did was we did sort of a huge and laborious analysis of all of the published breach notifications that organizations have to send to the state attorney general in whatever state they're operating in. So obviously all US breaches. And that was one of the clearest examples we see of everybody getting really focused on the Mission Impossible style stuff and sort of forgetting about the basics, because half of the breaches that we've looked at over the last few years have been some kind of phishing, cred stuffing, brute force, or use of stolen creds, right? Half.
Wow.
The next category down was web attacks, or that would be like the sort of classic hacks that we're thinking of. That was 17%, or maybe 19% in 2019, right? So again, it's really, really interesting to see once you actually break this stuff down. And most of the data that we use is it's not closed source telemetry kind of stuff. It's open source stuff, and we just go through the painstaking effort of collecting and analyzing it. And you see some gold dust material just kind of sitting in plain sight. And that was one of them, was just the prevalence of these kinds of attacks.
Wow. I love that. It's like it's all there. The data's there, the information's there, the whatever. It's just you guys bother to look at it and study it in depth, right?
Yeah.
For the benefit of all of us. So
eat it like a bowl of Cheerios.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, well, awesome, Sander, man. It's been a pleasure to kind of hear some of the details of what you guys are working on, and to know what's coming up next, like with the 2020 App Protect report. And man, we look forward to reading that thing. So thanks for being here with us, man. It's been really, really cool.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I think we're going to bring in Sarah and Ray back to kind of wrap this whole thing up. So all three of you, thanks for everything. I just think it's been really cool to go from Sarah and how, the groundwork, the strategy of, how did you start F5 Labs? Where did it come from? What's the motivation behind the transparency and the C level to the down in the weeds level? And then Ray, you've taken the reins and moved it forward with things like CryptoNice and others. And then Sandy, you're right there in the trenches every day doing this thing. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah. CryptoNice.
There it is.
Read about that. Yep.
It's not just crypto, it's CryptoNice. So Ray, how did you guys come up with that name, by the way, since we're talking about CryptoNice?
I wasn't actually really part of that. I think that was a Katie and David. I know Sander had some pretty good suggestions.
Okay.
So.
Love it.
I'm like the opposite. I got the name before I even start the project.
Yeah.
All of mine were, I think, vaguely terrible, and
there was plenty that didn't make the cut.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were
not
offensive.
one that you came up with, just in general.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, Katie chose it because it was she wanted to get crypto in the name just so that people understood what it was for.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be helpful, right? So she didn't want Kryptonite. She wanted something.
Yeah.
So CryptoNice. It was something like that. I hate to put words in her mouth when she's not here, but I think that was the thought process.
Yeah.
I'm phenomenally bad at naming stuff, and I try to go off in other languages. Okay, this is the root word I want in English, so I'll go to Google Translate and I'll just look in all the other languages until I find something that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
For
what's the word. Latin? Always go to Latin.
That's right.
Oh, Darren, let's not even talk about going to Latin for company names. People work for a company that had a Latin name, and it was just oh, really?
I had a hard time pronouncing it, and I had to say it probably 20 times a day. Yeah.
Well, I can remember your predecessor back when I was a customer. I would call, and the company was called Conjungi, but people would be like, Conjungi, how can I help you? And I, as a customer, I'd have to correct them how to say it.
Yeah. It's no, do you have conjunctivitis? Is this an
eye?
Exactly. Conjugal visit. It was just oh, guys, hopefully you're not watching this
it was a lot. It was a lot. Ray, that was 20 years ago, and I was joking around in chat about really cool cyber attacks, and I realized that as Sandra was talking, and we're talking about how we have to keep describing the same old threats over and over again and the same old root cause of breaches over and over again, I don't think I can actually count on my hands in the last 20 years enough really cool cases of breaches. Like I don't even think there's that many. I think it's all just repetitive, same old, too easy stuff, which makes what we do important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that always sticks out for me is Flame, right? Because they had to like break the laws of math in order to enable the actual like delivery of like that's the one where someone actually came up with something new, and of course it was the U.S. government, right? But
I'm sure there's stuff going on that we don't know about, but they
SQL Slammer. I like SQL Slammer was cool.
To your point about targeting, most customers are not going to get targeted by some sort of APT that has to do something really cool, like splicing fiber.
Right.
99% of it is all basic, well-known flaws, common root causes, us not improving over time, decades, right?
Yeah. And I would say, and if you want to be attacked, make sure that that's what they have to do to get to you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like you don't have to be the fastest in the woods. You just have to not be the slowest, right, to outrun the bear.
Yeah.
And I think you have a really great point about APIs. Like we've got new technology that's driving increased risk over time versus reducing it. APIs is the latest flashy thing, but we've been looking at cloud instances and no authentication, just like APIs, right?
Yeah.
If you think about how most apps are attacked, it's from mobile phones. That was a new sexy technology years ago, and we still don't secure those. So they're riddled with malware
and APIs on the back end.
Right.
And that's what bots are comprised by, IoT, right? Like,
yeah.
I would argue that it's just security is still not a priority, which is why we do what we do, because we're trying to make people aware of the contextualized threat.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's not a priority, until it has to be a priority. It's like, hey, when you're on the front news of the paper or you're the big latest breach, then suddenly it's significantly a priority.
And I'd argue that sometimes that's not even the case. They're happy to write the check and just continue to move on for it not being a priority.
Oh, yeah. The Black Hat talk yesterday, the keynote was about election security. Great talk. But why are we still talking about securing an election system? It's a pretty simple app from a logical standpoint. You should be able to control that. If people were able to build pyramids 5,000 years ago, this should be something we should figure out, right?
Yeah. Where are the ancient Egyptians when we need them? Right? Come on.
The aliens.
Or aliens, please. I could get it.
Yeah.
I'll take a break from this year. Beam me up.
Right. Whoever's watching this, if you could help us, please.
We're the good guys. Take us with you.
That's right. Yeah. Become peace. Stuff. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, everybody, this has been an amazing Black Hat virtual booth time this year in 2020. I know we're at our time here, but it's just been a pleasure to have each of you. So Sarah, with your leadership to start F5 Labs and now be the senior director of our communities around F5, it's awesome to have you leading the way. So thank you for what you do. And then Ray, man, for you to have taken those reins and just moved it forward and make Labs an even better place. And do things like Crypto Nice and all of these things. And then Sandra, to have you out there in the trenches doing the research. And it's like you said, there's a lot of gold nuggets out there. It's just you are the one that bothers to look for it and mine for that stuff and then share it with the whole world. And we're all better for it. So, man, we just appreciate all of you being here and for everything that you do. So thanks so much for joining us on DevCentral Connects Black Hat 2020 version.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming, guys.
All righty. Well, Jason, it's been an amazing time. I know you said you've never been to Black Hat. Frankly, I have not either. But now, I guess, can we say we've been to Black Hat now?
I think so. Even if it's tangentially. Right. If I'm saying that correctly, I get my tongue gets a little tied with.
Right. However you say that word.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like we are Black Hat veterans now. That's right. So it's like they said on Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby. He after he did some things, he was like, that just happened. So I like to think that Black Hat 2020 just happened. I was wondering if you were going to get a live stream appropriate comment out of the Ricky Bobby saga.
There's not many to choose from, but hopefully that was somewhat appropriate. Good to go, man. All right. Well, hey, for those that are watching, we will still have our virtual booth open here at Black Hat 2020, I think, for the rest of the day. So get out there and chat up the virtual booth attendees, take that Cypher challenge and win a chance to, get a t-shirt and other prizes. So we're still trying to make this as real as we possibly can. So you still have that opportunity. So Jason, it's been great. Yeah. So. Yeah, no one ever turns down a t-shirt. Right. I feel like that's a huge draw for booths. I mean, it's like, hey, how many t-shirts do you have at the booth? And you are going to get a flood of people. So that's right. It's always good. Well, good stuff, man. Well, Jason, it's been great. And thanks to all of you for watching this DevCentral Connects Black Hat 2020 version. I hope you've learned a few things about the threat landscape, about some of the things that we at F5 are focused on and concerned about. And we just want to make this a better, more secure place for all of us. So it's been great.
Yep. And go check out the excellent content at f5.com/labs.
That's right.
Excellent articles, some cool tools.
Yeah, you'll be better for it.
That's right.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week. DevCentral Connects next Thursday, 12:30 Pacific, just like we always are. So show up next time, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
All right. Take care.